Hey Jay, what's up? So I'm just going to go over this really quickly. VirtualBox and Murus. I have some files here too that I will show you as well concerning Murus and a couple other things. But we're going to go over VirtualBox and Murus, which is that PF software, console, firewall changes, just a couple edits that will occur from using the application. We're going to go over the basic ports. Really, that's probably something you'll just need to do. OSI model, just look that up on Google. It's pretty simple. We're going to go over CIDRs and NAT. I don't want to go over this VLAN stuff or the PATs because I think it's a little advanced, or it's just a whole other topic. Network interfaces specific to the pf.conf file, and then some of these, blah, 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 and then very simple DNS. All right, so VirtualBox and Murus. You already know about Murus. Oh, one other thing. Google Learn Command Line Terminal Mage, Unix for the beginning Mage, and then download this. It's amazing. It's kind of long. I didn't actually finish it, but it's really cool, and it just kind of gives you a game to learn some of the command line stuff. So in terminal, some real quick things to know: CD space, /, basically, and then ls. That's going to tell you where you're at. So it's change directory, and then you can type in whatever you want. And I push tab to get that to show up. We're going to be doing change directory /etc tab, and then I push tab again to show me what it is. And then you'll notice there's pf.conf, and then pf.conf, and then pf anchors. So that's really the main ones we're going to use. So I'm going to go, let's see, I pushed Q to get rid of that. Thanks, honey. And then I'm just going to push enter so we can get there, ls, so we know where we are. It tells me etc. I'm going to push command K to clear all that. So let's see, ls-la is a good one because it tells you file permissions, and then like the owner, and basically if there's an ACL or whatever. What else? LSOF space -I tells you existing active network ports. TCP and UDP, basically it's just like caramel versus chocolate, which one you prefer. UDP is much less secure than TCP. So my cardinal rule is I basically block all UDP, period. The only exceptions to that are sometimes for NTP, Network Time Protocol. I think it's port like 53 or something, or maybe that's DNS, I can't remember. I might open it on UDP, but really I just don't. There's just no point. And also any server or client or whatever you're setting up this firewall on, people would not be coming to you to hit your server or client for NTP, because like there's going to be an actual server that just does that. IPv4, IPv6, you know the difference. One's long, one isn't. What else? Okay, blah, blah, blah. Other commands that we'll need to know. Cat, so etc. That's just like, I don't know what it stands for, but basically gives you a readout of, for example, pf.conf. So it gives us the actual file. If we go here, let's see. So I'm going to do Command Shift G, and then etc. We'll go to pf.conf somewhere here. So I'm just going to copy it and then paste it in here because I don't want to mess the permissions up. And I open this up because this is the thing that's going to be changed. This is like the main file that's kind of like the overview of everything that's done. These are called tables, I think. Don't quote me. But this is where some changes will occur. Don't worry about, so no, disregard all of this for now. But this is a good thing to know of. And then the other one was these. These are where the actual folders are with the tables in them. Basically, this is the anchors are like the chapters in a book, and it loads those anchors from here, which are it's own little thing. And you'll see this more laid out when we install Murus. All right, I'm going to minimize this for now. Yeah, this made things really cool. It'll help you be more comfortable with the command line. Okay, so Murus. Let's see, downloads. I wonder if I have Murus on here already. No, I don't. Okay. There we are, downloads. 2.3, I'm just going to go and download that. And I'm also going to go over console. So console, you know what it is, you've used it, but it's a lot more, it's more complicated. People think it's more complicated than it is, but it's very useful. I'm going to go to view up here. We're going to, so they've changed this a little, but basically what I'm wanting is all of the messages for the system level. I don't know if they've changed that, but I think because of the way they changed the user accounts, it might be different, but we're going to start streaming. And all of this nonsense is constant. It's always doing something, but whatever. Errors and faults versus all. I would just do all. The purpose is just so you can kind of see what's going on. Let's try now and see what that is about. Activities. This is kind of neat. Process. This is kind of cool. This might be more useful. But yeah, let's just stick with probably now, because the idea is I want you to see the changes as they go. But just a reference, nothing to be. It's a useful tool. The other one is go to, let's see, Command Shift. Well, I just do. Trying to think of the best way to get here. Network. Yeah, I just use Spotlight and Open Network Utility. It's a really cool tool to do tons of stuff, like really cool. I guess, oh, it's been deprecated. Well, it's pretty cool. But anyways, what else? That's it for now, I think. We'll go back to our deal. So one thing that you need to be aware of is when you're navigating to your VM. So I'm going to do / and or actually I'm going to do tilde / That's just going to go straight to your user account. Your VM is probably going to be installed, we'll just say act like pictures with documents. It'll be in here and it'll say VM. You'll need to be aware of this path, because when you're setting the firewall rules on that VM, it will actually be something like this. So user / your username, whatever that is, and then we'll say VM, and then system, or whatever it might be. We'll just do system, and then etc and pf.conf, or something like that. Basically, my point is, instead of it being like here, instead of it being immediately to etc and then pf.conf, you're gonna have to first go, path to the VM, and then you'll enter this at the end of it. So path to VM is this, and then this will be at the end. So it sounds silly, but when you start getting into some of these network interface stuff, specifically the LO0, you'll need to be aware of that, because it could be different. Nothing major though. All right, so that's path, how to navigate to OSX and VM. That's how we did it. chmon and chown. Don't worry about that right now. In fact, let's just get rid of it. Console, we did that. Firewall changes. So the two locations, actually, let's install Murus. I'm going to open this pfconf that we did here. And I'm also going to open this path just to show you. You won't need to do this, but I just want you to see some of the changes that occur. Because it's kind of like big picture, so an anchor is there. I'm going to change this view so you can see the path bar. That way you can always get to where I'm at. All right. So I'm going to move this over. I don't know what the quick start guide does, but it's probably important. Murus. This is all the standard stuff that Apple does. If this little, whatever that's called, the pound sign is there, it means it's not actively going to be read within the command or the system by terminal, basically by your machine. So like a lot of times, if it's like this, that means it's active. So one of the things I'll do a lot is say say I've done this myself and I'm just writing this. Well, what I'll do is the pound or whatever that is, and then I'll just say scrub used for NAT only with EN0, like my own little notes or whatever. I tend to do them like this, depending on what I'm doing. But I'll do that to kind of remind myself in the script what the heck I'm actually trying to do, because I always it's a lot. Like you'll forget all of this. All right. Let's see. Open Murus. I'm doing an install. I want you to remember the PF anchors here. All right. Let's open it. So now, one thing to notice too, Murus should be installing its own path. Here we are, and then you'll still see those PF options. Let's see, install Murus. Okay. Okay, what we're going to do, I'm going to go ahead and push play. And we're going to enable PF. So I'm going to open console. I'm not sure if it will show us there, but it could be kind of cool if it did. Okay, so we're going to enable console in front of this Mac. See, kernel, there's a lot of stuff there that's doing. I don't see anything there that's useful to us. Some of that's kind of cool. Anyways, all right. So if you notice too, where it's Murus now, you see pfconf, and so Murus is taking the equivalent of etc. Like basically all these files here, pf.conf, pf.anchors, blah blah blah. Murus is basically just creating a folder and then doing the same thing on its own. So pretty cool. Okay, so if we go to pfconf here for Murus, see if we can is that it? No, that was the old one. Okay, let's see. Duplicate that. So it's probably locked down because of the, obviously you don't want people to be able to get into that because it's, your firewall stuff. All right, here we are. Here's the new one of Murus. Key both. So now if you notice, this is the Murus the Murus one. Okay, and this was the original. So basically, what they did is they're creating these. So this is all just basic. Any conf file will have this. Set skip on low. That's setting. Basically, if you had a server set up, you would have to have the value 127.0.0.1. This is known as the loopback address. And in the server, you basically configure it to where this would redirect to something called your FQDN. That's going to be your IP, which is, we'll just give a hypothetical. We'll say 172.14.12. Or actually, let's do 172.172.172.72. All right. Well, that you will also set up as myserver.domain.edu. So an example of domain is myserver.uh.edu, and you can do .e or something in there as well for different names. But the point is, you'd have your server, and whenever you, for example, you could go into, for example, ns lookup. We'll say apple.com. All right, so we got this address back. Okay, so now let's do an ns lookup on that. Notice we're getting the FQDN, or the fully qualified domain name, back. Now, Apple's advanced. It does a lot of stuff, but the point is, if you look up the number, you're going to get the name, the FQDN. If you look up the name, you're going to get the number. This is also can kind of be referred to as a PTR record, but don't sweat that. So dig-x, we'll say, let's use this right here. And we'll do all. I'm going to push Command K so I can just see this command output. All right, I just did dig-x and the IP, and then I space and then all in caps. Okay, so point is, PTR record is giving all this blah, 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 blah. It's a bunch of mumbo jumbo. But the point of this is to show you the FQDN is always equal to the IP. Now, that's in the world of DNS. In the world of your computer, your client, just local to that, laptop, 127 is going to be equal to the FQDN, because if people visit your site, they're not going to be hitting the loopback address, but you do have internal stuff that's used on your computer, like Etsy, Apache, all of this stuff, which is hosting your site. It has to have a way to talk to and provide that content without it being accessible to DNS, the world, so that's the way that it separates it. It's a complicated concept, but just take it with a grain of salt, and hopefully it makes sense. But a lot of DNS is huge, so don't sweat that. The main thing is to know you have a number associated to a name, an FQDN, and that's a website basically. And then if you look up the website, it's going to refer to the number. If it doesn't, then it's not working. All right. See here. All right, blah, blah, blah. These are all anchors. So in Murus, you can set up, all right, these are the white lists, these are the black lists, these are the blah, 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 inbound and outbound, what you're allowing on the local intranet. Let's see here. Now notice this was the original that Apple has. All right, nothing major, just, an overview. All right, let's see. I'm going to close that because it kind of wasn't as helpful as I thought it was going to be. So anchors, these are basically so say I want to have whitelist, I want to have blacklist. Whitelist, these are the IPs I will always allow, and then blacklist, never, always block. And then these will be you will do Ethernet only services, and then we'll do Wi-Fi only services. So you could do like whenever it comes in, you'll do a scrub, so to speak. Basically, you're going to scrub that packet when it sends it in to make sure it is, it's all legit or whatever, and it's not broken. And this, you might say, I want to have assigned as a flag, and then have an output to logs or whatever, and that's just a hypothetical path all these are. But point is, you can really set a granular level of all of this. So then there's scrub, so that you've got snort, and then sniff. All of these different things are concerning packets. So these packets are, just one. There's tons of these little packets that we send back and forth and we take it for granted. But you can do a whole lot of security stuff with this as well, or you can just set it to ignore. Like there was one deal that we saw a minute ago that had ignore on it. Can't remember where it was, but anyways, and the point is sometimes you're going to want to ignore it, other times you're not. So for example, to set block policy drop. So these are the ones that you just want to drop no matter what. If somebody hits your server with a port 22 SSH, then you're just going to block everyone. Fingerprints, that's just, it gathers what type of systems are hitting yours. So if it's a Windows Surface Pro or whatever that even would be, or it's a Unix one, or if it's an iPad, this is how it kind of sniffs that out based on MAC ID association. I think the first 6. So set skip on loopback interface, blah blah blah. That's saying if it's loopback, if it's hitting my loopback, like if it's hitting my local from my intranet, from my 10 or my 192 or my 172, that's my network. If my system is hitting the local net, the local host, then it's the server. It's basically trying to talk to itself, but it has to route through here. It's just saying, just ignore it, let it do it, because otherwise, every single thing you try to send through here would try and go through this. It wouldn't work. At least to my understanding is it won't work based on experience. I don't know why, but I suspect it's just an inundation of redirects that is impossible. Excuse me. All right, so let's see. Okay, so 21 I think is, gosh, it's been a while. Telnet is 23. Always close Telnet. Always close it. So SSH, you should probably always close this and do you can basically take the RSA key and put it on the client or server, both the client and server, in order for it to authenticate without having the port open. That's another topic. 443 is secure HTTPS. I think this is either I think it's the network time protocol, NTP 80, unsecure browser 389. I think that's SMB or FTP. I can't remember. 989, don't remember. 3389, I remember it was important. Maybe this is SFTP. 3389 and 5900 are some of the remote desktop ports that are required. And then 8443 it's a secure redirected port. So I mention 8443 because I've created servers. So like we'll say Windows Server, and then I run Apache Tomcat, which is actually, it was a VM server, and then I ran Apache Tomcat Catalina, which is essentially another VM. And so on my actual path to the Apache stuff, I set the server to redirect to an 8443 because 443 on that was still available if I needed it, but I redirected an RDR using Tomcat. And RDR is a network interface that you can do within the pf.conf stuff. But anyways, don't sweat that. 8443 is just another way to have your server FQDN colon 8443. So for, let's see, yeah, I mean, you get the point. So it's instead of, yeah, it's just another way to hit a website. OSI model, it's really simple. It's actually not simple to me because I never learned this in school, but it's something that would be beneficial to know. I'm trying to see if I could find a very simple. Yeah, this is probably good. Something like this. Wait. Okay. This. So basically knowing the different layers, this is the topology of a network. So you're physically touching it. This is the cable. This might be the core or the edge server. I mean, I couldn't even tell you all. I actually don't even take my word for this because I don't remember it. I'd have to Google it. But this is critical to really understanding and troubleshooting network layers and like where the problem might be. All right, NAT CIDR. So so if you have a home network at home, actually there's a file I had for this that'll make more sense. Okay. So at a home network, okay, let's go back in Murus real quick. Sorry. We're going to install boot scripts. That'll basically help it launch its startup. And you've got, let's see, system. This is kind of cool because it allows you to choose these to set like a pre-configured template. Services, this is everything that every service on this computer, whether or not you can use this to determine whether or not you want to block it or allow it or whatever. Groups, so one of the things I've done, so I do this, so like for example, Apple, the underscore CIDR, I do the underscore like this because in Unix, it prevents things from breaking depending on what you're writing and where you're writing it using UTF-8. I do that so nothing breaks of mine, and I can always just tab it in at least in a bash script. All right, so Apple CIDR, that's going to be like 17 blah blah blah. So I'm going to add an address 17.0.0.04/8. So what I'm saying is I want all of Apple's stuff to always be able to hit this, or I'm just creating the groups to then assign those services accordingly. Another example would be, for example, well, let's just keep it simple like that for now. All right, let's see, options. Yeah, this is a good one. So ignoring interfaces, UTONs like VPN, stuff like that. So certain things like EN0 or EN1, I think EN0 is typically Ethernet, EN1 I think is typically Wi-Fi, don't quote me, I can't remember, and it can all be changed either way. Point is, all of these different things, this goes back to the interface stuff I was talking about. So when we get to network interfaces, like LBAC, the loopback, L0, the loopback address, which is the local host, or also 127.0.0.1. You need to know this, and you need to know that this is equal to localhost. It's a simple thing, but it will help you. Just understanding EN0 is like Ethernet or blah, all of these have assigned values. And the reason is, in the beginning of a pf.conf file, it allows you to assign, like, for example, LO0, instead of having to write loopback address 127 blah, 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 at the like, and this is just a hypothetical here, but what you can do is you can just say variables, and this is the y that this is set. You can do variables, and then notice the pound, and then you can do en0 is equal to Ethernet, whatever, 1. En1 is equal to NAT connections, and then you could do UTON is equal to IPsec VPN. You get the point. And so when you're writing a command down here, you can just say en0. So you could do logging or set log en0 equal to on logging enabled en0 en1 uton, and then export to, let's see, logging. I mean, you get the point, right? The point is you can do this shorthand and set all this, and you can even go to even further links, which is that you define etsy pf.conf etsy pf abc less blah 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 blah. Point is, you can do that to an export to this table and this FQDN on this SQL database, and then redirect back to your local host. I mean, I'm just speaking out my rear here, but the point is I want you to see that you could set all of this crap up for en0, and so every time you write it, it's going to know, actually, I jumped through this hoop, then this hoop, then this hoop, read this table from this IP, and then I read the database, and then I go back home every single time. Instead of having to write all this code every freaking time, this will save you so much time, and it honestly organizes everything much neater as well. And when you're using BB Edit, this is Textastic, they're all the same. Well, they're not really. BB Edit is the old school text wrangler. Man, it color codes it. It's beautiful. Once you like save it as a shell or what, depending on the format, it is beautiful. So I'm gonna get rid of all this nonsense here. I'm just gonna get rid of that, and then so let's see here, filtering preferences. Yeah, here's an example of something you might not want. You may not want IPv6, right? You may not want multicast, so you may not want your iPhone to be able to mirror, or you may not want this this device here to be able to mirror to your iPhone or whatever, to AirDrop, and so that's going to get rid of that. MDNS is pretty much the same as multicast, but whatever. Loading Apple PF Anchor. Really, why would we need to load this? Because remember, it's in a different path altogether, so we probably would just uncheck that because there's just no need. I mean, that's semantics, but you see my point. ICMP, this is just saying, can I ping this system or not? So we're going to block it since we don't want it to respond. Let's see. So here's an example of how they write the actual stuff. Like if you were using Unix and you had to write this yourself, this is what you would be doing. So for example, block policy, we're going to drop whatever on, let's see, pass quick is what I've done for LL before. Now I'm not advising that, but okay, never mind that, but whatever. Okay, let's move on. Okay, inbound. Okay, so we're going to say all open ports are managed, that's fine. We're going to do, okay, we're going to say all remote logins. Okay, I'm going to block that. All remote logins we're going to block, and, one sec, let's see, block. I want to log that. Okay, we're going to block. I haven't used this version, but it's still really cool. All right, so now we're blocking all attempts for 22, period. Or we're going to, let's see, all remote management. We're going to block only. Let's see if we can. We're going to only block, or we're going to pass only our local net. So I'm actually going to go in here and we're going to create another group for our home network. Let's see, what's our home network? The terminal IP config. What's it? IP config. I forget what the heck the command is for this. List all or something. Let's check. IF config. Okay, this is one of the fun things you'll get with working with multiple platforms. Is you'll need to know all these different things. So on the side here, you'll notice this is the network interface stuff that we talked about a little. So like this stuff here, these little things that can also be variables in the script to save time. This is telling you a whole bunch of crap that you don't need to worry about right now. This is, remember that? You recognize that bad boy? 127. All right. Flags. Okay, this is all. These all have rules and stuff, so it's important. Or it's important for this stuff to work. What was I doing this for? Notice PF log is running. I forget why I was doing that. Oh, I wanted to see my IP. We're going to be on. Probably this right here. Okay, so we're on 10. So what I'm going to do is set group name home, and then I usually do 10 add new group. In here, I'm going to do 10.0.0.0/8, I think it is. Not sure what the difference between IP and string is, so we'll just do string. Okay. Now I'm going to go back to, sorry, I keep coughing, the remote management. We're going to go to home. So I want to be able to remote from home anytime. I don't know why. Oh, it's because it's the non-professional version. I have the professional, but whatever. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and push this play button there to go ahead and make sure it's good. This is basically what you write. This is the path, etc, Murus, blah, blah, blah. This is a perfect example of what that pf.conf file looks like. This is to the T what it is. It's pretty complicated, but there's a reason these people make a lot of money. Because it's really not as hard as people think. Okay, here's what we want to pass. This is that. Here's what we want to block. This is that. We're loading the anchor. Here's our anchor name. We're going to load it from this path. Okay, here are the options we have. All right, load that anchor from this path. I mean, remember, all it's doing is loading these things. These are our anchors. So really, it's pretty. This is the boss. This is like the outline of what we're doing. These are all the things it pulls from that have their own individual rules. So the rules, for example, under options, if we go to options, you're going to see pass quick on AWD, blah, blah, blah. You're going to see all that in there. So I'm going to copy it or duplicate it. Now, why am I harping on this? The reason I'm harping is I want you to see the connection between terminal and between like what applications are actually doing for us. this the one? Let's see. I don't remember which. Here we are, options. So remember we talked about the AW, DL, blah, blah, blah. All this stuff is what you see. So the point is, this application does everything for you. It's awesome. But I want you to understand the connection between what's happening in the background of the folders, because when to be better at this, you need to be able to potentially modify this stuff. Another thing is, for example, Command I. Let's go to more info or sharing permissions. This is important, like system. That's equal to root, has read and write. Wheel is just a generic. So this is the owner. This is the group. Wheel is just a generic thing that's used in Unix so they can read the contents. Everyone has read-only access. This is important because this value, pf.conf, we're jumping around a little, but I want you to see that. So we're going to change directory. Or is it Murus? So Etsy, Murus, pf.conf. It's not a directory, so we're going to cat that. So I'm actually going to do change directory. So here, let me slow down. I'm pushing the down and up arrows. The up arrows will give you the last command. So I'm going to change directory to Murus because I want you to see, and I'm going to do ls to make sure we're in that path. It says Murus, we're good. So now I'm going to do ls-la because I want you to see the file permissions of pf.conf. So as you can see, root, which is system, wheel. This is the process ID that's running if you were to go into activity monitor. View, all processes, perfect. See the PID here. All of these numbers associate to some kind of process that's running. So for us, it was, 951. This is probably changed by now. 951, see it's now mail D. So point is, here's the date, here's the file. All of these values here, this is what's known as a sticky bit. It's a nightmare for me because I'm not a pro at this. But this stuff here, this is actually really cool to know as well, and it's something you should know. So we've got permissions for the owner, group, and then everyone. At least that's how I always. I don't know what the right verbiage is, but this is specific to Unix. But ACLs and stuff, access control list, are applicable to Windows as well. So owner, we'll just say root or system or ladmin, local administrator, or jcrig if that's what you named it as. Group is going to be staff. Can't think. Wheel. Grab the main ones. Everyone. You could put nobody, or you can, whatever. You get the point. Point is, there's 9 of these values. So the first one, the owner, is going to be dash RW. That's the first 3 here. So dash RW. And then the next 3 are dash R. I'm going to delete these since we just did them. We have the next 3, which is this. So that's going to be for group. And we have the last 3. Make sure I did this right. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, perfect. Okay. So read only. All of these values associate to numbers. So just keep that in mind. You should probably look that up sometime. We won't go over that right now, but permissions are a big deal. That's the point, is these permissions. So if you go in here and we modify this, if you're an LAdmin, which we are, because you can tell you're an LAdmin, you do sudo, you know, chown recursive to this file, pfconf, blah, 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 blah. Well, if you then go back in and you do an ls-la to identify the permissions, this is going to be different. This will now say LAdmin. This, depending if you've assigned read and write permissions, may be different. Now, pro tip, moving on from this, if it's a server, you want 644 typically. 755 is the generic, like, system can read and write everything. Group can read everything, and what's the other one? Yeah, same deal. So, anyways, just look that up. Pretty cool. We can go over that more in depth later if you want. So the GUI, the application, this OSX, it's easy to forget. Like, this is all just convenience for us. All right. Okay, let's see here. Okay, so what I would encourage you to do is go in here, or whatever this assistant one is, and then start testing things. Just configuring it, whatever, just with different profiles. That's pretty much the gist of it. But okay, let's get back on the NAT component, and then we'll be wrapping up some of this stuff. Okay. So there's the internet, which is in the world. The internet in the world only works because of DNS servers. DNS servers are the highways of the internet. We wouldn't be able to get anywhere without them. And so how do we have our own stuff securely? Like, when I go to AT&T and say, hey, I want the internet, why don't I just get a WAN, a world area network, like an IP that's, public? Well, the reason is because I want some privacy. So AT&T basically typically says, all right, here's your IP, 75.7.7.7, whatever, that's just a hypothetical, 0.76. Actually, I'm going to make this a little more. 75.75.117%. All right, this would be my WAN equivalent. So this is the IP that AT&T points to my house pretty much all the time. Now, when I go into my router, this is public facing, meaning the world has access to this IP. The world, no matter what. There's no way around that. Now, a LAN, so the router typically converts the WAN, it sends the WAN to the LAN. The LAN is where it's plugged into your computer. Or, that can be Ethernet, or that can be based on Wi-Fi. So LAN, which is also known, so in order to do this securely, there's 3 IPs. I'm trying to think of the way to word this, but let's keep it simple. There's 3 IPs that will talk to that WAN. Well, when I have a private IP and intranet at my house, there's only 3 ways to do it: a 10, a 172, or a 192 CIDR, period. And the reason is that they're blocked off networks and they're reserved specifically for people's homes. So it allows you to still use this single IP here for a whole lot of stuff, but it allows you to do it on tons and tons of devices within your network. Because if you had 20, 30 devices, which most of us do, and you're trying to, use the same IP, which technically you are, all of these IPs route to here, and then it all sends out like it's one device. But this needs to be able to differentiate what you want to do on here in order to set, just to make it more granular, and for it to understand the systems inside your own network. Because otherwise you wouldn't be able to reach your own networks with VPN, if say you wanted to VPN into your desktop, you have to go through here and then do the port forwarding stuff, right? You have to do port forwarding with either a static IP or a DHCP manual IP. So what if you wanted to VPN into a different computer? Well, this is why. And that might be, the point is you'll always use one of these for NAT, network address translation. So this IP is really what the world sees you using. Every time you talk to a computer, this is what's actually sending out that thing to figure out what you need, every time. Let's see, well, unless there's hypotheticals, but you get the point. You're always going to have a 10, a 172, or 192. This is important because on the firewall stuff that we did, we had to assign that group. For example, you'll see these nets. These are exactly what I've always used. However, I always create my own because I'm really OCD and I want to be able to modify stuff on my own. There's certain limitations. I don't remember what they were, but I always do my own because I have more control. Now that does mean I have to lock down, more things, but whatever. I'm fine with that. I want you to look at services. So for example, DNS tells me the port. That's super cool. It really is helpful to have. This is how I learned a lot of the network ports, is because I would look in here at DNS and I'd be like, oh, 53, and I just kept seeing that over and over again. So let's go to NTP because I always confuse those. 123. Well, I think it was also something with 54 or something, but anyways, whatever. BNC. This is to screen share remotely, like these ports. It uses Kerberos, which is really, a lot of things. This is probably 5900. Let's see. I don't know if I can expand that, but whatever. All right, so let's see. DHCP. See, these kind of ports. I mean, it's just kind of cool to be able to use. This is 3306. This is an important one to remember. Let's see, VPN. I mean, all these ports, most of us have no idea. Anyways, this will help you. So SMB file sharing, stuff like that. Print server, if you're going to do that, that's probably a good idea to do. It would help you test some things and actually see if it works. All ports. This range here is important. Little things like this. Now remember what I talked about. I go in and I change it to where it only accepts. Let's see, so 165. So this is a range, so 1 to 65,000 something or other. This is a way to do an input when you're making changes in the system. So this understands that it's ports 1 through 65, blah, 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 thousand. All right, so now I'm going to create my own service. We're going to do UDP sucks, block it. We're going to add new service. All right, this is a new TCP UDP. Well, we'll see about that, huh? So now we're just going to do protocol UDP. We're going to add this range. We're going to try and add this range. Add range from 1 to 65535, which is every single possible IPv4. And we're going to add that. We're going to try to. Okay, I think that should be it. Okay, now we're going to go to inbound rules. We're going to go to UDP sucks, and we're going to always block. Now, if we were on the advanced version that I use, I like to log certain things and have notifications just because it makes it more granular. So, for example, on port 22, if somebody's trying to SSH into my system, I definitely want a notification, and because then I can go and figure out what IP that is, and then I can go into and add them to. So another thing I'll do is like a blacklist. blacklist meaning block, always block, and then you can just add that manual IP. So 172.156.123.234. So it'll always block that IP. Whatever. That's just an example. That's for manual blacklisting, but we do something. I like to do it automatically. All right. Let's see. Okay. Let's go back to. We're almost done here. This is a lot of information, but it's kind of cool. We talked about FQDN. We talked about PTR. I don't want to go too much into that. So yeah, basically just look at this stuff that services and like basic services. This is kind of cool because this is kind of like the things that are basic, which it's kind of neat. Just mess with it and try and have some fun with it. Let's see what else. Main passwords. Let's see. Yeah, so it's log connections and then main block list. Absolutely log connections. So we're always going to block. This is cool because you can go to nations. Well, it's not letting me here, but you can block all of China, stuff like that. Now, if you go into Etsy, there's ways to do. All right, let's just do a recap of this. So there's a lot of information about Murus firewalls, but here are some of the paths that a lot of this stuff is located, where a lot of it's located. Let's see. It's a lot of information, but at first just mess with it, have fun, and then I can share more of this with you. Let's see. That was kind of an overview of the groups and anchors and what it uses. Minimize this real quick. I'm going to go over those remaining little things I pulled out, and then we'll be done. Okay, so we've already gone over that. We already went over this example. Okay. All right, so we talked about LS list services, cat in order to read certain things without changing the permissions. So let's do that real quick in terminal. I'm going to close these. So we're going to change here for Etsy, Murus, and then on the tab so I can see what there is. And then we're going to enter, and then we're going to cat Murus tables. So it just basically gives me an output of what's what. Persist versus drop versus blah, blah, blah. The point of this is to show you that all of these tables, for example, home, tin, pass list, I could have another group that was UDP sucks, and it would show up here. So tables are basically the chapters, so all the stuff I want done to TINnet, to the TIN CIDR, this just helps me organize it. Another way you can do this is you can do it by Ethernet interfaces if you wanted to. So for example, all Ethernet or all Wi-Fi, but that's much more advanced, and I wouldn't recommend that right now. Okay, so let's get rid of. So blocking quick means block without any, like basically don't do any work, just block. Passing quick, for example, LO0 or the localhost, the 127, like pass in quick because we want to be able to quickly process what the system needs to process. And then block log. So we're going to block it, but we're also going to log, all v4 or whatever. Okay, so that's one example of that. Okay, so understanding the differences, Command K, in shells. The bash, that's the shell. ZSH is the most common that they use right now, or you can do shell, or you can do ZSH, but all of the commands are different. I mean, bash is simple. You can tab things, like to where it will show you the possibilities, literally pushing tab. I like that because I'm lazy. I don't want to have to do all this stuff. Like say I'm writing change directory to Etsy, we'll cite pf dot. I can push tab. It's going to tell me all of the options I have, which helps me know what, and I can just push a tab again. It's so much quicker. So it's nice. There are limitations, but not many. It's kind of a it's a friendly terminal command line. Let's see. These are some of the commands that the application enables in order to, so for example, when we installed the application Murus, I'm just going to get rid of this stuff real quick. When we installed the application Murus, it ran a certain command. It ran this one, sudo PF CL-E. I usually do the big E because it's for token, but that's just me. And then it's saying, okay, this isn't supported in kernel. It's actually disabled, and now PF is enabled, and it gave me that token number, which really -E, the same thing. It's already enabled. So now we're going to disable it. I don't want packet filtering running. We disabled it. We can do sudo pfctl-rules. Well, this is going to read out that pf.conf file in Etsy. So the reason I'm showing you this is if I were to go to the Murus application and go to PF rules or whatever, that big file that had all those different cool colors and all that, this is really what you'd see. This is all of the subjects, so to speak, and this is going to be the variable, or this is probably what you could assign, or what I would assign as the variable, in order to link them to this anchor using a soft link. But that's within the script. That's besides the point. Whenever you would push that button in the application, it's running this command to show you that. All right. This is some of the stuff I was talking about. Like you can get logs with this command called TCP dump, and then you can have that pass its output to the system logger, so it will show up in console. It's a little advanced, but it's kind of a neat way. So basically, look, as you can see, I've used the pound or whatever, and I write it because I don't remember any of this. And so here's how I create a virtual network interface for PF logging. Boom. This, okay, get the logs. Boom. Like it's a pretty nice way to do your scripting. I always recommend at the top. I didn't do this, but you should definitely write a quick okay, so PSL. This is something if it's an important script, I'll do. So 22 at 1328. Overview of PF using Murus and basic terminal and network info, random, stuff like that. And that way, every time I come in here, this is something I do. You get the point. It allows me to separate it and organize the data a little more clearly. On this side, I would usually do the same thing, blah, 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 and that way you'd have have it a little more neat looking, but I do that to organize, the data that I'm doing, and that way when I'm looking at it later, it's much more clear. You don't have to do all this crap, but you see what I'm saying. Anyways, all right. This means block all. Everyone's blocked. Okay. These are just examples of Murus clone files. Pretty handy. Let's see. All right, that should be good for now. I think we've gone over quite a bit of data, a lot more than I anticipated, to be honest. But yeah, this is kind of a quick overview, and this is pretty deep dive here. So yeah, what other thing? PF states. This is that thing we ran. It runs that command pfctl-s rules. This is all it is. This is saying changing the command. Whenever you click that button, it's saying, it's like show me the FQDN versus show me the IP, show host name. Firewall config, that's what we just were. PF log. Oh, this is cool. So whenever you get, whenever I want you to block, I want you to set up a printer and then set up, try and hit that printer. I'll send you the code so you can do this. And I want you to have it to where it will log attempted access to that printer, and you'll see okay, whenever you block, and that's a way to troubleshoot if you've done it correctly. Network interfaces, this is all the crap that you may or may not need to assign, but it'll help you. It'll help you so much to just see this stuff. And if you did want to write something specific to it, but you'd have to go into network sys, whatever the command is for IP config or IF config, to look at what each set of hardware is defined as. But who cares about that? It's a waste of your time. Yeah, pretty cool, man. Yeah. Let me know if you have any questions on this, and just, yeah, hopefully it helped a little bit.